This is the last episode of the regular season. Again, time does fly by and a whole lot has happened in 2024-25. Some of the stuff that's happened doesn't even feel like it was during this season. That being said, when you reflect upon this regular season, as hard as it may be, do you have a favorite moment, one that stands out above the others as something that you will think back to this season and remember it by, or something that at least when we talk about it right now that stands out to you? Because we were talking about it before. It's really hard to pick just one. So I know this might not necessarily be the favorite, but something that stands out.
Yeah, I mean, we just talked a lot about it, but like this is always going to be the season that Luka got traded, right? And like without having to go further in depth, or further in depth than we just went, like it's one of those moments where you're never going to forget where you were when it happened. It doesn't matter. Yeah. This could be 40 years down the line and we'll be telling, people like, oh, like you think this trade was crazy? Like you should have been there when Luka got traded to the Lakers and nobody believed that it was true and all of that. And like, that's just how this season is always going to be remembered. So that is, I think almost undoubtedly the key moment of this year. But there still were a lot of other cool things. And like, I think, one of, especially covering, like we said, year 7, like games start to blend together, moments start to blend together a little bit. Yeah. But like one of my favorite parts about each season is like the players who take a massive leap and you start to see like, okay, they could change a franchise. And like, I think like this year in particular, like Cade Cunningham is someone who like had a big breakout year and he's completely changed everything that's going on in Detroit with the level that he's playing at. I think about like Amen Thompson, and the way that he's helped the Houston Rockets kind of expedite their rebuild and become the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. I'm not calling him a franchise changer, but like I think like even like Dyson Daniels is someone who like the breakout season that he's had defensively this year, defense player of the year caliber season, where, he's really established himself as one of the premier perimeter defenders in the NBA. It's just cool to see like guys like that who they're so young still, all 3 of the guys that I just mentioned. So like, you don't want to like, you're never going to say that you were counting them out. No one was ever counting out Cade Cunningham. Like, maybe Amen Thompson was a little bit more forgotten and Dyson Daniels wasn't really a household name until this season. But like, it's just cool to see that like players are going to continue to grow. They're going to continue to work on their games in the offseason. And every year to year, yes, you're going to have the mainstays, the top players in the league, guys like LeBron, Steph, KD, and then like that next wave, guys like Luka, Tatum, Shea, like, those players are always going to continue to improve and kind of separate themselves from the pack. But it's always my favorite when like players like that go from, middle of the pack, maybe they're top 50 players, maybe they're top 75 players, whatever it is. And then they start to like inch a little bit closer to like top 30 players in the league, top 25, like, wherever you want to place Cade this season. So, those are the moments of players going from being like, a lottery pick that, oh, maybe he could be a fun player down the road or a solid role player or whatever it is, into like, oh, that's a guy. Like, Detroit has their guy, Houston has their guy. That's always one of my favorite moments of the season.
Yeah, it's funny when I was thinking through this, I guess I got a little sentimental. But I was thinking about the Pistons, going from winning 14 games to being in the top 6 in the Eastern Conference and what that means for that franchise and that fan base. And hopefully they can end the drought of having not won a playoff game, not even a series, a playoff game since 2008. So I was thinking about that and what that meant. Cade Cunningham, his Crocs, his first All-Star season. His first All-Star season with Detroit. So, big shout out to him. And also shout out to the Pistons too. They just unveiled their new uniforms for next season. Like I don't know if you saw that. Did you see the Slam photo shoot? I know you're still holding your laughter right now.
You just threw me. I wasn't ready for a follow-up question. You just threw me off my game.
Yeah, I figured I would reel it back in. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can look it up. I'm not mentioning it now. This is a family pod. But still, they got the black and teal, like, and red and or like whatever with throwback colors on like the throwback. I don't know if you remember the city editions they did a couple years ago. Anyway, I'll keep going because I just threw you completely off with that. The other sentimental one I was going to throw out there was Lonzo Ball. I remember going out of my way to tweet about it, just like seeing him back on the court, having not played for, I think it was like 1,000 days he hadn't played. And it was cool. I think last night he actually had a guy like who like donated like the knee cartilage to help him get back on the floor, like did like a groundbreaking procedure that nobody had ever done before. And there were doubts that we'd ever see Lonzo Ball play again. I think the ship has sailed on him being what he maybe could have been when he was selected second overall, but at the same time, there were real doubts and thoughts that he was never going to play again. And to see him back on the court, see him back impacting basketball, see him back dunking, it's so hard to get back to any type of impactful level in the best league in the world. And Lonzo Ball has done that. I know he's injured right now for a different reason, but that was a really cool story for me because I just remember, like I said, going out of my way to be like, man, like, there were times and I got real sad, like seeing Lonzo Ball, like not, being able to run and jump and all of that stuff to get back and play, whether it's 15, 20 minutes a game and just see him back on the court. It was really cool to see.
Yeah, that's one of those moments where it was such a big deal at the time. And then you kind of just like get numb to it and you see him on the court and run around and everything and you don't really think about it. But then like you said, the picture of him last night with the guy that donated the knee cartilage, like that's, those are the types of moments that like, there was those rumors that like the guy couldn't even like stand up on his own when he's sitting down, and like to get back on an NBA court, making an impact. That's really, really cool. And as I was like kind of just like looking through teams here in the standings, like another thing that jumped out to me, like the season that James Harden's having, like he's having an incredible season and proving that he is still
35.
One of the best playmakers in the history of the game. Like he is just still doing it at a high level. And like, obviously we harp on like the trio of like KD and LeBron and Steph all the time, but like Harden feels like he's forgotten in those discussions sometimes. Russell Westbrook feels like he's forgotten in those discussions sometimes. You have Chris Paul, who has been playing every single game, night in and night out, hasn't missed a game yet. And that's like with a team that fully entered tank mode after the trade deadline, shutting down Victor Wembanyama and shutting down De'Aaron Fox. And for him to still be out there every single night, mentoring those guys, so like a tip of the cap to that generation as we, I don't think you and I ever take it for granted, and always going to go out of our way to watch every LeBron versus Steph matchup, watch those types of players every single night that we can. But, just to understand that they aren't always going to be around the game, and there's eventually going to come a time where there's an NBA that doesn't have LeBron and Steph and KD and Harden and CP and like all, that generation, Russell Westbrook. So just still being able to enjoy those guys night in and night out, playing at the high level they are, and understanding that that's not normal for these guys to be making that level of an impact still at this age. It's cool that as an NBA fan, being able to watch those guys from the moment they came into the league all the way till now and still making that level of an impact. I don't take that for granted.
Yeah, and I'll throw a couple other names because you never know. This could be the end. But Kyle Lowry, obviously the GOAT, greatest Raptor of all time. This could be the end for him, especially given how the Sixers season went. Another guy who I'm surprised you didn't say it, but Al Horford as well. Big shout out to him. I know he just said it. After shout out him and his Gator boys. Also, by the way, shout out to Florida for the national championship and shout out to UConn for winning the women's national championship. But it was cool to hear him after that game say he was going to be playing against or with Walter Clayton Jr. next year. So sounds like year 19 is on the way for Al Horford. But, these guys, like you said, like it's not easy for, to do this. And it was cool to hear, LeBron on his new Mind the Game with Steve Nash. Now that he got the pod back going with him talking about what it takes, the effort and the routine to do it in year 22 and do it at a high level. These guys aren't cutting corners. Mike Conley, another guy like who they might not be averaging all-star numbers anymore, but the fact that they are key pieces of teams who have real hopes to contend. I'm talking about Conley and Horford. That takes a lot, especially at this stage of your career. So as you see those guys, you see Minnesota and Boston go into the playoffs. Obviously, like you said, it's obvious with LeBron. It's obvious with James Harden, KD. Not going to make the playoffs this year, but very obvious with those guys. But the guys who are still playing roles this stage of their career, still figuring it out. Big shout out to them. As always, thanks to everybody who tunes in to the pod, wherever you get your podcast. Please make sure to subscribe on all podcast platforms, as well as follow us on YouTube and Instagram at NBA Sound System Canada. For Kyle Irving, my name is Gil McGregor. Thanks for tuning in to us this week. We will catch you back on here, same time, same place next week.